Welcome back to our commentary series on the writings of Ajmal from his website, theborderofaminds.com. I'm always fascinated by how he weaves personal reflection with these really sharp insights, and today's piece is no exception.
It's that blend of vulnerability and wisdom that makes his blog, The Border of a Mind, so compelling, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in his post, Kindness Inwards, he tackles something we all struggle with, that inner critic. But he does it with a twist that I found really refreshing.
Right. Instead of just offering the usual advice about silencing that negative voice, he dives into the power of self-compassion, almost like it's a muscle we can strengthen.
And for someone like me, who tends to be pretty hard on myself, that reframing really caught my attention. He even uses this analogy of talking to yourself as you would a friend facing the same problem.
That's what's so interesting here. He doesn't just tell us to be kinder, he gives us a concrete strategy to practice it. Imagine, for instance, a friend feeling bad about messing up a presentation at work. What would you say to them?
Oh gosh, I'd be super supportive, reminding them that everyone makes mistakes and that one presentation doesn't define them.
Exactly. But how often do we extend that same grace to ourselves? Ajmal challenges us to shift that internal dialogue and replace that harsh critic with a compassionate friend.
It's funny because as you were saying that, I was thinking about a time I completely bombed an audition. My inner voice was brutal, but if a friend had been in that situation, I would have been all about pep talks and perspective.
It's so easy to get caught in that cycle of negative self-talk, isn't it? But Ajmal's approach isn't about ignoring our flaws or lowering our standards. He seems to suggest that self-compassion is actually the foundation for growth.
Yeah, that's what struck me too. It's not saying just be happy with mediocrity.
Yeah.
It's more about creating a safe internal space where we can acknowledge our imperfections, learn from our mistakes, and keep striving to be better.
And the research actually supports that idea. Studies have shown that people who practice self-compassion are more resilient, happier, and even more motivated to make positive changes. It's not just about feeling good, it's about setting ourselves up for success.
It's almost like that harsh inner critic is actually holding us back.
Exactly, and I think that's a crucial takeaway from Ajmal's post 4. Self-compassion isn't about weakness, it's about giving ourselves the support we need to truly thrive. It's fascinating how Ajmal connects this idea of self-compassion to his own personal journey of exploration, the border of a mind. His blog feels like an invitation to join him in that process of self-discovery, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. And I think that's what makes his writing so relatable. He doesn't shy away from the messy parts of life, the doubts, the setbacks. He even talks about how he used to struggle with self-criticism, which makes his insights into self-compassion even more powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like he's saying, hey, I've been there, I get it, and here's something that helped me.
Yeah.
And that authenticity makes a huge difference.
It does. It makes me wonder, though, if there's a risk of going too far with self-compassion. Like, could we become so forgiving of ourselves that we lose that drive to improve?
That's a great question, and it's something I've pondered myself. But I think Ajmal addresses this indirectly when he talks about the difference between self-compassion and complacency.
Oh, how so?
Well, he argues that true self-compassion isn't about letting ourselves off the hook or ignoring our mistakes. It's about acknowledging them with kindness and understanding, but also with a commitment to learning and growing.
So it's not about lowering our standards, but changing how we respond when we don't meet them. Instead of beating ourselves up, we offer ourselves support and encouragement.
Precisely. It's like that old saying, you can catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. When we approach ourselves with compassion, we're more likely to be motivated to make positive changes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But for someone who spent years being their own worst critic, how do you actually start shifting that mindset? It feels like such a deeply ingrained habit.
I hear you. It's definitely a process, not a switch you flip overnight.
Yeah.
But remember that analogy Ajmal used talking to ourselves as we would a friend. That's a great starting point.
So next time that inner critic starts berating me for, say, procrastinating on a project,
Yeah.
I should imagine what I'd say to a friend in the same situation.
Exactly. Instead of saying, oh, you're so lazy, you'll never get this done, you might say, hey, it's okay to feel overwhelmed. What's one small step you can take right now to get started?
Wow, that's a huge shift in tone. But I can already feel how much less stressful that feels.
And that's the power of self-compassion. It's not about ignoring the problem. It's about approaching it with a more supportive and encouraging mindset.
I'm curious though, is there anything in Ajmal's post about how to deal with those really deep-seated insecurities, the ones that have been with us for years?
That's an insightful question. And while he doesn't explicitly address that in this particular post, I think his overall message about self-acceptance and embracing our imperfections is relevant here. He seems to suggest that true self-compassion involves acknowledging all parts of ourselves, even the ones we might not be proud of.
So instead of trying to push those insecurities away or pretend they don't exist, we can learn to approach them with curiosity and compassion.
Exactly. It's like saying, okay, this is a part of me, and I'm going to choose to treat it with kindness rather than judgment.
That's a powerful idea. It almost feels like it takes away their power.
It can definitely shift the dynamic, because when we stop fighting against those parts of ourselves, we free up so much energy and emotional space to focus on growth and healing.
This is making me think about all those times I've avoided trying new things because I was afraid of failing or looking foolish. What if I could approach those situations with a more self-compassionate mindset?
That's a great point, because when we're constantly afraid of making mistakes, we limit our potential, don't we? Self-compassion gives us the courage to step outside of our comfort zones and embrace new challenges.
So if we connect this back to Ajmal's own journey of exploration, it seems like he's advocating for a kind of radical self-acceptance as the fuel for growth.
Absolutely. He seems to be saying that true growth and transformation can only happen when we're willing to embrace all of who we are, flaws and all. And that requires a healthy dose of self-compassion.
It's like he's giving us permission to be human, to embrace the messiness and imperfection that comes with being alive.
It is incredibly liberating, isn't it? Because in a world that often feels obsessed with perfection and achievement, Ajmal's message feels like a breath of fresh air. He reminds us that it's okay to stumble, to make mistakes, to be a work in progress.
And what's so powerful about that, I think, is that it creates space for authenticity. When we're not constantly trying to present this perfect image to the world, we can be more genuine both with ourselves and with others.
Exactly. And that authenticity is where true connection happens. Because when we're willing to show up as our imperfect selves, we invite others to do the same, and that's where real relationships are built.
So in a way, Ajmal's message about self-compassion isn't just about personal well-being, it's also about creating a more compassionate and understanding world.
That's a beautiful insight, and I think you're absolutely right, because when we cultivate compassion within ourselves, it naturally spills over into our interactions with others. We become more empathetic, more forgiving, more willing to see things from different perspectives.
I love that. So if we want to create a kinder world, we need to start by being kinder to ourselves.
Precisely. And that brings us back to Ajmal's blog, The Border of a Mind. It's a space where he encourages us to explore those inner landscapes, to challenge our assumptions, to embrace our full humanity. And I think that's a journey worth taking, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And for anyone listening who's intrigued by what we've discussed today, I highly recommend checking out his website, theborderaofamind.com. You'll find a treasure trove of thought-provoking pieces like Kindness Inwards, as well as his art and photography, which are equally stunning.
And remember, self-compassion isn't just a concept to read about, it's a practice. So as you explore Ajmal's work, I encourage you to consider what's one small act of self-kindness you can offer yourself today.
That's a great question to leave our listeners with. It could be something as simple as speaking to yourself with more encouraging words, taking a break when you need it, or celebrating a small victory.
Every little act of self-compassion makes a difference. And as you continue to cultivate that inner kindness, you'll find that it not only benefits you, but also ripples out into the world around you.
Thank you for joining us on this commentary series of writings by Ajmal on his website, theborderaofamind.com. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. Stay tuned for future commentary series. Until next time, be kind to yourselves.